Todrick Hall is being slammed again for his comments on the late Stephen Twitch boss. And now, in an exclusive from LoveBeatScott.com, we're hearing more about how fake the Real Friends of WeHo actually is in their new interview with one of the stars, Dorion.
Baby, baby, won't you listen to me? I got that flavor, I know you're dying to feed. I ain't no dancer, just got some hip in my feet. Now throw your hands up. Ooh, you bring the lighter, I got the fuse. You make a fire, I'll add the fuel. Follow my lead, just watch your shoes. Gotta turn the heat up to get this cool.
Welcome back to the Kempire Daily YouTube channel, your #1 source for pop culture news and music, entertainment, reality TV, and so much more. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. As you know, I did a quick recap of the Real Friends of WeHo the other day, and I also talked about it on Tuesday Takeover. And I told you that I was really surprised that the show was actually really good outside of everyone's feelings about Todrick Hall. I said the show's not really about him. It's about these other folks that I found a lot more interesting. But before we talk about the Real Friends of WeHo, we have to talk about Todrick Hall. So I saw this story yesterday and in an interview. So as you know, the cast are doing interviews. And Todrick Hall did this interview, and the conversation was talking about Stephen Twitch boss, as you know, who took his life not too long ago. So since then, people have speculated what could it have been. And there have been people that have spoken out and said, oh, I think it was because of that. Look, regardless of that, we have a wife that's healing and children that are trying to heal and friends and family who have been in our comment section. So in a new interview, he was talking about this, and I had tweeted this yesterday that I was like, how do you, first of all, why are you speculating on this man's death? And why are you making it about you? So in his speculation about why Twitch may have taken his life, he says he believes, according to Todrick, he believes it was because of the scandal that happened over at the Ellen DeGeneres show. So in an interview with Page Six reminds us, he says, in 2020, Ellen DeGeneres was anonymously accused of allowing an onset culture of racism, fear, and intimidation by several former employees. The shocking news created a wave of online criticism, including some directed at Stephen Twitch boss, who stood by the talk show host. Todrick said this in the interview. He says, people were looking at him like, why are you still supporting this woman? He told Page Six, and I think he was under a lot of pressure. Hall speculated that the digital backlash may have contributed to Boss's state of mind months before his death. He says, I don't know what was going on in his life that may have led him to make that decision, but I understand. Right now, when I get online some days, like right now, if I was in the wrong position of where this abuse would keep happening for years and years and years, there's only so much a human can take. He says, he was just somebody who always supported me. He was also kind and down to earth. He came over my house a couple of times and we shot TikTok videos together. I don't understand how this went from talking about your friendship with Twitch to speculating on why you think it may have happened. Look, interviewers ask questions all the time that you don't have to answer. You can just like, you know what? I don't want to speculate on my friend's passing. Well, now he's being blasted by people that know and love Twitch as well. So TMZ writes this. They says friends of the late Stephen Twitch boss are calling out his pal Todrick Hall after he suggested the pressure around Ellen DeGeneres' workplace scandal might have been a factor in his suicide. He says, for those unaware, Todrick made the implication this week, as you know, while promoting the new reality show, The Real Friends of WeHo, telling Page Six about this. So a source close to Twitch tells TMZ it's extremely negligent and self-serving of Todrick to assume he knows what led to Twitch's death. The source also found it unfortunate he would speculate, especially while promoting his own project. TMZ says that they're told Twitch loved his time on Ellen and had a ton of respect while working on the series. pointing out he was even named co-executive producer in the final season. And just when I don't want to say I was defending Todrick, but just when I was telling people to watch the show and support the show, and I still think people should watch and support the show because Todrick is one person on here from the LGBT community. We have a whole, first of all, we have quite a few Black people on the show, which I don't know about you. I was like, oh, wait a minute. There's other Black people on the show I want to watch. But there's also people of the LGBT community on this show. And like I said, I was actually really surprised. And according to multiple people from the show, they're saying we didn't know. First of all, they're saying that we didn't know that this was going to be on MTV. And they originally thought that this was going to be on Paramount Plus. All right, so let's get into B. Scott's exclusive. Shout out to Walker who wrote this article and interviewed Dorion. You remember we talked about Dorion, and Dorion, I have to say the interview was really good because it gave me a better picture of what's going on here and a reminder I am never doing reality TV. So in an interview with lovebscott.com, an exclusive interview with them, Dorion breaks the fourth wall and reveals when he signed up for this show, first off, he was under the impression it was going to be on Paramount Plus, and this is literally supposed to be, remember the show A-List New York? Remember that show? I kind of miss it. It was actually a pretty good show. Well, this was supposed to be a reboot, but called A-List Los Angeles. Well, according to Dorion, he found out the name of the show and everything about this show and MTV when we did.
That's really upsetting to me, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't say that.
I have to talk about some of the things that he says in here. Remember, I alluded, because we heard word on the street that there were 3 people a part of this cast that refused to film with Chris Salvatore because he had an OnlyFans. Well, Dorion says it wasn't him. And I really thought Dorion was one of those people because if you watch the Real Friends of WeHo, Dorion was sort of like, I'm very about my brand, and I could see him saying, I don't want to be a part of that. All right? So there are certain things that I just have to highlight from this interview that I think will make you go, huh? So this originally was supposed to be an A-List Los Angeles. This was supposed to be a reboot of that series, and they changed it into something completely else. And it called it The Real Friends of WeHo. Come to find out, Dorion says, I don't live in WeHo. I live in the Valley, and I like the Valley. So this is what Dorion said in this interview. And of course, we will cite our sources so you can read the full interview in the description. So check out our links. Okay. So Dorion says, I was approached back in March of 2021. He says it was pitched to me as the A-List Los Angeles. It was supposed to be a reboot of the series A-List New York. All right. He says, I was told it was going to be a docuseries style that followed me working on my brand and showing parts of my personal life. Come to find out in the very first episode, you really don't get anything about the brand. I mean, we know they mention it, but no. He says, also, I was told the show would be on the streaming service Paramount Plus. I initially said no several times, but finally signed my contract at the last minute. So Walker asked him, did you at least know who the other cast members were? He says, during the process of them courting me, production told me names of people who were being approached. So Curtis Hamilton, as you know, they actually have known each other for years in Hollywood. He said they've been friends for a few years. He said, I had no idea who was on the show until filming. So in regards to the show not being on Paramount Plus, which originally, according to Dorion, it was supposed to be, and it being on MTV, he says this. He says, I found out in the press release that we had no idea it was going to MTV and that it would take away from Drag Race. I watched Drag Race and I love Rue. He's iconic. Again, I was still under the impression that this was A-List Los Angeles for Paramount Plus. So I was shocked to find out that it was going to MTV. He says, I didn't sign up for MTV. He says, I also didn't see the poster beforehand. I saw it on the same time as everyone else, and that's where I had a serious issue. They promoted the show as 6 gay men living in West Hollywood who are friends. He says, first, I don't live in West Hollywood. I live in the Valley. I love the Valley. He says, I never go to West Hollywood. I'm not in that scene. Aside from Curtis, I wasn't friends with any of the cast. A lot of you already kind of felt that, but we were pleasantly surprised that some of these folks had known each other. Look, if you watch reality TV, none of this surprises us when they try to bring people together. But he's like, I don't even live in West Hollywood. and I didn't sign up for that show. And here's a really interesting part that I believe that a lot of people will look over. Did MTV out Dorion on this show? As he said, this show was promoted as 6 gay friends coming together, you know, sharing their lives and businesses and things like that. So he says, aside from Curtis, I wasn't friends with any of the cast. He says, I also have never confirmed or talked about my sexuality. And some of you were talking about this when you talk about him being on College Hill. He says, I felt betrayed because they have me identifying as something I'm not. I'm Dorion Renaud. Well, look, we talk about respecting people's identity. That's pretty disrespectful to put me out there. What if he's bisexual? What if he's pansexual? I was just saying this week I might be pansexual because Andy on The Traders was looking kind of good. But you know what I'm saying? People are just identifying. MTV, that's very irresponsible. Production company, that's very irresponsible. So they also talk about in this interview, you know, when I recapped and talked about this episode, this very first episode of The Real Friends of WeHo, we talked about that scene between Joey and Dorion and how it went from 0 to 100 very quickly. And I honestly, Dorion explains in here that, you know, during the pandemic, and a lot of you can relate to this, you know, I was at home, I was working from home, I really wasn't out and about, so I have some social anxiety. Look, even before the pandemic, I wouldn't have blamed him for having some social anxiety. Not everybody wants to be in and out and about, especially with people. He says he's not even in the WeHo scene. So can you imagine being thrown into this situation? Cameras, people you don't know. He was eating on that good food. Okay, if you haven't seen the episode, then you don't even understand what I'm talking about. So Dorion is asked him to talk more about the negativity surrounding the show. And look, a lot of the negativity surrounding the show is because of Todrick. I believe production took a risk. I think they really thought that people would watch the show just to hate Todrick, but a lot of people are not watching the show because of Todrick, and they're not even giving these other guys a chance. But I'm not that type of person. I'm not bullied by people's opinions. I'm gonna watch a show if I think that it's worth watching. And I told you guys, I actually enjoyed the show outside of Todrick. Yeah, sorry, Todrick. You seem to be on a redemption tour on this show. I'm going to continue to watch the show, but bye, Todrick. So Dorion talks about the backlash, and Dorion says this about the backlash that the show has been receiving. He says, it's crazy we are getting no support. He says, there are people saying the most negative stuff online. Some have gotten death threats, and we aren't even getting support from the network or production company. It's not the cast's fault that we ended up on MTV. I would have not signed on to the show if I knew about the name change, the theme of the show changing, and the network change. I don't feel comfortable representing a city or community that I'm not a part of. So there's a lot of things happening here that I understand why Dorion's like, I don't want any part in this. And a lot of the backlash, because I know a lot of people are saying the backlash is because of Todrick, but a lot of the RuPaul Drag Race fans are upset that this is now interfering. This show, 6 episodes of the show, is interfering with their 90 minutes of Drag Race. But honestly, guys, I don't believe it's because of this show. I believe MTV decided to do this to Drag Race. Remember, this moved from VH1 to MTV. Remember, just because it's maybe the same production doesn't mean that the new executives over at MTV are not the same people over at VH1. I believe they decided to make those changes to see if it would work. But you all have said it's not working. We want our 90 minutes of Drag Race. I still haven't watched the show. I know. Take my gay card away. Get over it. But I don't believe that's a reason to boycott this show. I don't believe that's a reason not to give this show a chance. Look, if we all did stuff like this, we would miss out. We would miss out. A lot of you say that you miss A-list New York. I think they should have stuck with that instead of the Real Friends of WeHo, because they literally are trying to be like the Real Housewives. How about we get an original thought, people? Guys, as always, we will be citing B. Scott's exclusive interview in the description, so you can check that out. Let me know your thoughts on Todrick weighing in on tWitch's passing. And if you've given the show, The Real Friends of WeHo, which will be coming on tonight after RuPaul's Drag Race, a chance. Let's continue that conversation in the comment section. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. Thanks for watching.
You bring the lighter, I got the fuse. You make a fire, I'll ask you. Follow me, lead it. Just watch your shoes.